Alright guys, let's play Twilight Imperium. So let's start with the basics. It's a 10-player game. We play with the Prophecy of Kings expansion and all of the codices. And the way we choose to draft this time was to pick a random pre-made map from Tabletop Simulator and play that. Then the first thing we do is that we roll for a slice. So each player rolls a die, and 1 to 6 determines which of the slice we get. And if we roll more than 6, then we simply roll again until we find a slice for each player. And then we choose 2 factions randomly from the black box that are in Tabletop Simulator, and then we can choose either of those 2 factions to play and then discard the other one. In this game we are 4 players, or we should have been 4 players. Unfortunately for us, the 4th player couldn't make it the first night, so we agreed that I play 2 factions instead of just 1, and then he would take over when we reach the next game night. But that really never happened, so I actually ended up playing 2 factions throughout the whole game, and I'm playing against 2 very new players to this game. I think they have less than 5 games in total. And lastly, we roll for speaker, so we know who gets to pick strategy card as the first one. I end up becoming speaker, and I get to play Arborec and the Argent Flight, and the green player will be Sardagnor, and the blue player is Emirates of Hakan. Arborec is red and Argent is white. Then we get some secret objectives, and in this game we will follow Arborec. So the only secret objectives that we know of publicly here is that I should have 4 mechs on 4 planets, on 4 different planets. That's one of them I can choose from, and the other one is to control a legendary planet. And since I don't have any legendary planets in my slice, or near my slice, then I decide to discard that one and go for the one with the mechs. And since we picked a 6-player map, then we're removing 2 of the slices in the galaxy here. And unfortunately, I am playing 2 factions and having 2 new players, so I have a lot to see. So I have a lot of questions to answer, and I actually do this a little bit wrong. So we end up having 2 equidistance between Arborec and Hakan, which is a little bit of a shame, but I don't think it really changes the outcome of the game. So obviously one of the equidistance should have been in between those 2 players, instead of me building these very, very long hyperlanes between the 2 slices. And of course, before we begin, we get to flip 2 public objectives. The first one is to control 4 planets of the same trait. So that is hazardous, cultural or industrial planets, and we need 4 of those. And the other public objective is to spend 3 tokens from the either tactical or strategy pools. And you need to spend them at the status phase, not during the action phase. And the same goes with the planets. We need to control the planets in the status phase. And since I became speaker, I decided to go with the leadership strategy card. It's the boring choice, but then one of the public objectives is very easy to score, because I will get 3 command tokens when I play the leadership card. And I can buy some more if I have additional influence to do so. And the Sardagnor player, he goes for politics, because he wants to get the speaker token so that he can pick strategy card as the first one in round 2. Then Argent picks construction, and I wonder what he wants to do with that. And lastly, Hakan picks the trade strategy card. Well, because, you know, Hakan, the master of trade. And then we have a house rule when we are less than 6 players. Then we roll for 2 additional strategy cards instead of each player having 2 strategy cards. So in this way we get 6 strategy cards in play. And the way we do this is that we roll a dice. So the card with the lowest initiative number remaining is picked if we roll 1 to 2. The second lowest is picked if we roll 3 to 4, and so forth. So we roll the dice twice and find 2 strategy cards that are in play. And then after every player has taken their turn, then we roll 1 dice. And if we roll 1 to 4, then the lowest strategy card is played. And if we roll 5 to 8, the highest strategy card is played. And if we roll 9 or 10, neither of the cards are being played. So in this way, we don't know when the strategy cards are being played. We only know that there's a good chance of them being played early. But we have also experienced that they actually are being played after, or at least one of them is being played after all the players have passed, which is both annoying and a little fun at the same time. And now with the setup in place, let's get started. So I have the leadership strategy card, so I go first. And the first thing I do is I activate the system in front of my home system and fly in there with a carrier, 2 infantry, and a fighter. And then we get to explore the planets. Let's see what I get. A blue relic fragment. And this will actually turn out to be a really good find later in the game. And then I also get a green relic fragment, and that won't help me as much. Now it's the Snedecor player, and he does more or less the same thing. Activates the system adjacent to his home system and flies in there with a carrier, some infantry. Let's see what he gets. He gets a planet attachment, so it is now a planet with a green tech skip on it. And now it's Argent's turn, and he activates Primor and flies out there with a carrier and some infantry. And a fighter. 2 fighters. It's a mercenary outfit, which will give him 1 additional infantry. Now it's Khan's turn, and he also does the same thing. Argent didn't use the legendary planets card that will give him 2 infantry he can place on whatever planet he controls. And I think that's because I want to do that a little later when I have some more planets further out into the galaxy. And let's see what Hakan gets. A functioning base. So I think he can gain a commodity on that. And then he gets a green relic fragment. And now we roll for the strategy card. So already after the first turn for everybody, the technology card is being played. And here, as Arborec, I usually recommend getting Sarween tools as the first one, because after every time we have moved, we get to produce. So if we have Sarween tools, then we can reduce the cost by 1. And that basically means we get 2 infantry or 2 fighters or 1 destroyer out for free every single time we have activated a system. But in this case, I actually abstain from researching a technology simply because I want to get some mechs out. So I want to use the resources on producing mechs instead, so that I get closer to scoring my secret objective. And then I can wait with Sarween tools until round 2. So as my second turn, I decide to use my agent and replace the cruiser with a carrier, so that I have 1 more ship with capacity, so I can fly out and get some more planets in round 1. And Snedecor has already started taking his second system here. And he finds a Dyson Fear on one of the planets. So that's a planet attachment that gives him +2 to resources and +1 to influence, which is awesome. So now I couldn't see it on my small screen here, but I think it was a 3 resource and 3 influence planet. Now Argent flies in and takes Atlas adjacent to Megator Rex. I wonder if he goes for Megator Rex in round 2. There's a possibility for that. And he also finds a planet attachment. And now I realize while Hakan is taking his turn that there's something wrong with the hyperlanes. But I keep getting questions and I'm being distracted. But that's how it is when you play with new players. And now Hakan has also taken another system, and it's the end of round 2. So now we roll for the NPC player and to see if the diplomacy card is being played. And it wasn't. In his turn 3. And now we got a second carrier, so now we can fly out and gain control of some more planets, which is really important to do in round 1. So we'll go out there with a carrier, 2 infantry and a fighter. Let's see what I get. A core mine. So if I remove 1 infantry, I can gain 1 trade good. But as I need the infantry to produce more units, Arborec has infantry with production 1 on them, then I decide to keep the infantry. And then I find a second blue relic fragment, which is awesome, as you will see later in the game. And now I get ready to produce 2 mechs. So I use the production capacity on each of the infantry and 3 resources on the home planet and 1 trade good to produce 2 mechs. So now I'm halfway to getting my secret objective scored. And I completely forgot that I can actually get a mech out for free in every status phase by using my mitosis faction ability, I think it's called. And now back to Sardak, who plays the politics strategy card as his 3rd action. So he gets to be speaker, and the rest of us can join in on the secondary and buy 2 action cards if we want to do that. But I don't think any of us actually decides to do that. Moving on to Argent here. Let's see what he is up to. So he activates the system adjacent to his home system, flies in with a destroyer and an infantry. Unfortunately, we don't have, or he doesn't have, capacity for bringing any more infantry out there, so he can only gain control of 1 of the planets. And of course he goes for the one with 4 influence on it, so that when it's unexhausted at some point, then you can buy 1 more command token by exhausting that when the leadership card is being played. Now he flips Primor to get 2 more infantry out. They are placed on Arinam, so it's easier to get... No, on Mir, so it's easier to gain control of Arinam in round 2. And now there's actually a heated argument going on because I think it's the Sardak player who says I already used Primor to place 2 infantry, so we start counting the infantry, and I have 1 infantry more than the number I started with, because all 3 of us actually forgot that I could place 1 infantry when I explored Primor, which was a shame. So I actually lost an infantry there because they were new players and I couldn't remember why I had an extra infantry. So as Hakan's 3rd turn, he plays the trade strategy card, and he replenishes Sardak Nor, and he also replenishes Arborec so that he can wash his commodities and convert them into trade goods by trading with us. Usually when we play with Hakan in my ordinary play group, we don't do the X-1 where the player with the trade strategy card gets 1 more commodity than he pays with trade goods. With Hakan we usually do it X-0, or an equal number of commodities for an equal number of trade goods, simply because Hakan will get so insanely rich the other way. But the 2 new players, or at least Hakan here, refuses to do so, and I think that's awesome because we don't have that many choices. We could of course don't trade with him at all, And that was the last player's turn, so now we roll for the diplomacy card. That was an 8. So it isn't played yet. So if we roll 1 to 3, the lowest initiative number card is being played, and 4 to 6, the highest. And then from 7, 8, 9 or 10, neither of the cards are being played. So now Arborec, as his fourth action, plays the leadership card and gains those command tokens for free, those 3 that I am probably using in the status phase when I want to score that public objective. Oh, I can reveal that already now. But of course the other players can also buy some command tokens by using the secondary, and you don't use a token from the strategy pool to buy more command tokens. The leadership card is the only one where you don't pay a command token from the strategy pool. So it just costs 3 influence and or an equal number of trade goods to buy additional command tokens, which is extremely important in this game. So Saragno also bought 1 extra command token. Now let's see what Arborec does. He also buys 2 more command tokens. And here Hakan is actually making a critical mistake because he's not buying any command tokens. As far as I remember, he keeps his resources and trade goods. I actually try to advise him to buy some so he can score a public objective in the first round, but he refuses, and that's completely fine. But he decides to buy or produce ships instead of going for the points, which I think is a mistake. And now we're back to Saragno. Let's see what he does. So he basically passes at the end of his turn. Now gets to be the Argent Flight. And he plays the construction strategy card. And Argent goes for 2 PDSs, which is completely fine for Argent. They can certainly be a PDF faction if they want. But I wonder, what is his secret objective? Is that the one he's going for, since he's prioritizing PDSs this much in round 1? And I think we got to see there, have 4 PDSs out on the game board. But I changed my mind and go for 1 PDS and 1 space star, because Atlas is a pretty good planet, both location and resource wise. So it's a 4 resource and 3 influence planet, but the 4 resources plus the space dock gives Argent the ability to produce 6 units every time he activates Atlas. And now it's Hakan's turn, so he activates his home system and produces some units. And again, I think he should have saved those resources and trade goods for buying at least 1 more command token so that he could actually score a public objective in round 1. So now we are at the end of round 4 and we are rolling for the strategy card, and this time diplomacy is being played. So if we go in on the secondary of that, then we can unexhaust up to 2 planets by paying a token from our strategy pool. But it is fairly late in the game, so I'm not sure, or fairly late in this game round, so I'm not sure how many of the players are actually going to follow the diplomacy card. And now we're back to Arborec that passes, and Saragno has already passed, so that means that it's Argent's turn now. And let's see what he does. He also activates his home system, flips 3 resources on the home planets, and then he produces a cruiser, a destroyer, and 2 infantry. For a total of 4 resources, and then Sarween Tools reduces the cost to 3. Now it's Hakan's turn, his 5th action. And he passes for this game round. Now it's Argent, and he also passes. So we are in the status phase, and Arborec gets to score first. So we pay the 3 command tokens and score the first public objective. And now it gets to be Saragnar. And he also spends 3 command tokens to score that public objective. And the same goes for Argent Flight. And lastly, Hakan does not have enough tokens to do so, and he doesn't control 4 planets with the same trait. And let's see what the next one is. Spend 3 influence, 3 resources, and 3 trade goods. Amass wealth. That is definitely one that is easy to score as Hakan. So I'm resetting the game here, getting ready for round 2. Well, I hope you liked this video, guys. Of course, I will publish round 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 because the game has already been played. I am just editing the video. So get back for more Let's Play Twilight Imperium. Thank you for watching. Alright, so we are ready to play round 2 of this game where I play Arborec, but also Argent, but we follow Arborec. And we are now in the strategy phase. Saragnar starts with picking leadership. Argent takes construction. He probably has a secret objective, and I know that. Hakan picked trade because of Hakan, and Arborec picked technology, so that I can research Sarween tools for free, and then I can produce, for instance, 2 infantry for free after each tactical action where I move some units, as long as I have infantry and or mechs along with me. And we also roll for the 2 NPC cards, and this time Diplomacy and Imperial is picked. And that brings me to the objectives for this game round. First, I want to score the public objective about spending 3 influence, 3 resources, and 3 trade goods. Then I also want to score my secret objective about having 4 mechs on each of 4 planets. And lastly, I want to pull 1 more secret objective whenever Imperial is played. So let's see if I manage to pull this off in round 2. And I can also spoil that Argent is making a critical mistake. But now Saragnar is moving closer to Megator Rex, and he just explored an industrial planet and found some abandoned warehouses. And now it's Argent's turn, and he uses his only tactical token, command token, to move into Megator Rex. And of course that will give Argent an important point, a point nobody else can score. But the only other action he has is the construction strategy card, and that basically means that he cannot do anything else in this game round until the leadership card is being played by Saragnar. And let's see how friendly Saragnar is when I start complaining about this. We're moving on to Hakan here, who activates Evera, the equidistant system between Hakan and Argent. And this will prove to be a really good move from Hakan's side, but we won't see that until round 3. But now he moves in there with a carrier, a cruiser, an infantry, and it's a cultural planet which he gets to explore. And let's see what he gets. A blue relic fragment. Alright, so now we got a green one and a blue one. And now it's my turn as Arborec, and I play the technology card immediately, simply because I want Sarween tools so that I can produce, for instance, 2 infantry for free after I have moved my units. And Saragnar just explored AI development. Hakan doesn't. Oh, he researched AI development. I don't think Hakan researched any technologies. And Argent is going for self-assembly routines, simply because the mechs can fly on the destroyers without taking up any capacity. Argent has capacity 1 on his destroyers. So basically, he can move, for instance, 1 infantry and 4 mechs on the same destroyer, which is pretty good. And now we are rolling for the NPC card and see if Diplomacy or Imperial is being played. If we roll 1 to 3, then Diplomacy is played, and if we roll 4 to 6, then Imperial is played. And we roll 4, and that means that the Imperial card is being played. Arborec, I wanted to do the secondary of that, so I get another secret objective. And we don't see it on the screen here, which one I get, but it is Become a Martyr. So basically I score this secret objective if I lose control of a planet in a home system. And now we are starting on turn 2. In round 2, Ansar immediately plays the leadership card. Arborec doesn't buy any tokens, he has enough. Argent did not have enough influence to buy any, so his only choice is to play the construction strategy card, and he places 1 PDS on Primor and another one on Mir. I wonder what he wants to do with all those PDSs. And Sarlachnor is also placing a space dock, and he's going to put it on Ang so that he has a forward space dock pretty much in the middle of the galaxy. And that will be and that is a good decision from his side. He's going to use that a lot. I can spoil that already. Now it's Hakan's turn, and he plays the trade strategy card. And here it's again my turn to make a mistake as Arborec. Arborec is a 3 commodity faction. The mistake is that I need 3 trade goods so I can score that public objective. But I guess I have too much to think about. But I get to make a simple 3 commodities for 2 trade goods, or the famous X-1 trade, and then I only have 2 trade goods. Such a stupid mistake. So now I can use the rest of the round trying to find 1 more trade good so that I can score that public objective. But let's see if I manage to do that. And now it's Arborec's turn. So he moves out. Moves a carrier, 2 infantry and a fighter. And explore it. Explore Lodor and see. Paradise World. Alright, so now it's a 3 resource and 3 influence planet. So that makes it a very versatile planet. But of course also annoying to spend either the 3 resources or 3 influence. And then I use Sarween tools for the first time to get 2 more infantry out for free. So the tech starts to pay itself back. And then I place some control markers on the 2 empty planets in a very empty system. And after Arborec, we roll for the NPC card. So let's see if Diplomacy is being played. And it is. We roll 3. Arborec hardly has used any planets, so I won't do the secondary of that, where we can spend a token from our strategy pool to unexhaust 2 planets. And Argent is completely out of tokens, so he cannot do it either. And now let's get into turn 3. So Sarlachnor is passing, so is Argent. He has no more actions. So now it's only Hakan and Arborec. So Hakan produced in his home system. And as Arborec, I activated my empty system. Flew in there with a carrier, 2 infantry and a fighter, and then I produced 2 mechs, so that I now have 4 mechs on 4 different planets. So that my secret objective is hopefully ready to be scored. And now I activate my home system because I want to use the remaining resources. And since I cannot produce any infantry on my space dock, then I produce 2 cruisers and a destroyer. And I get to use Sarween tools again, both when I produce the mechs and also here in my home system. So that's the 3rd time in this game round I use it. And as my last action, I flip the agent and replace one of my cruisers with a dreadnought. And now it's time to pass. Alright, so we are in the status phase, and since Sardak Nor has leadership, he gets to score first. So let's see which public objective he is going for. He scores the spend 3 resources, 3 influence and 3 trade goods. And no secret objectives. And now it's Argent's turn, and he cannot score. He doesn't have enough trade goods to score the 3-3-3 objective. So ultimately, I can only score the secret objective about having 4 PDSs out on the game board. And I of course placed those PDSs on some of the planets that I really want to hold. So that was Mir, that is a 4 influence planet. It's Primor because it gives me 2 infantry for free every round. And on Atlas, where I have a forward space dock that I also of course want to keep. And Hakan scored the spend 3 resources, 3 influence and 3 trade goods public objective. And now it gets to be Arborec's turn, and I didn't manage to find that 3rd trade good, which was very annoying. So I can only score one of my secret objectives, and that is to have those 4 mechs on 4 different planets. And I also completely forgot about how I can deploy the mechs. I always forget that ability when I play the Arborec. Alright, we are now in the agenda phase. The first one is a search warrant. It's a law. That means we need to elect a player. The elected player gains this card and draws 2 secret objectives. The owner of this card plays with the secret objectives revealed. And Argent actually really wants to go for this one. Arborec is not abstaining from voting, but because I play both factions, then we decide that only one of my faction can participate in the agenda phase, because otherwise I could totally dominate who would get elected for what, or what the outcome would be of a directive. But this also really has some drawbacks, which was really annoying. So I cannot recommend this approach where one player plays 2 factions and the other just one. But if you have a solution on how you can fix the agenda phase in that scenario, then let me know in the comments below. But basically, Argent is using 15, is voting, is giving himself 15 votes. And that is because getting 2 secret objectives for free to choose from. And then hopefully it can make up for the mistake where he didn't really get anywhere in round 2, because he ran out of tokens, or I ran out of tokens. So the 2 secret objectives I got was to be the last to pass and discard 5 action cards. The second agenda is Research Grant Reallocation. The elected player gains any one technology of their choice. Then for each prerequisite on that technology, they remove 1 token from their fleet pool and return it to their reinforcements. And since Sardak Nor can completely decide who gets that, then Argent plays a Diplomacy Rider on Sardak Nor. It's not really important in this case, because Argent is not really feeling threatened. But if Argent guesses right, then the other players must place 1 command token in a system where Argent controls a planet. So basically locking it down in round 3. And then I can say that Sardak Nor is the elected player, and he gets to get a technology, and he goes for the Dreadnought 2. And that was the end of round 2. I can say that Hakan moved into Evera, this nebula adjacent to Argent, and that proves to be a really strong move when it comes to scoring a point in round 3. So stay tuned for round 3 and see how it goes. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Alright, we're ready to get started with round 3, but first let's have a quick look at how the first 2 rounds have gone. So we have Argent in the lead with 3 points, Arborec and Sardak No on the second place with 2 points, and Hakan last with just a single point. And we are now in the strategy phase. Sardak No has already picked leadership, that he wants to stock up on command tokens. And then Argent picks trade, probably because he lacks some resources to be able to score public objectives. And then Hakan is picking technology. I wonder what he is up to, but it fits Arborec really well because I want to research Dark Energy tab. I don't have that much movement. I'm actually picking the Warfare strategy card so that I can use some of my units twice. And now we're rolling for the NPC strategy cards. The first one is Politics. And let's see what the next one is. That is Diplomacy. And now it's Sardak No's turn, and he plays Leadership as his very first action. And this always puts all the other players in an interesting dilemma. If you have any planets that both have resources and influence on them, do you want to spend the influence this early in the game round, or do you want to keep the resources to produce for, or maybe research technology later in the round? But Argent is for sure buying some extra command tokens, trying to catch up on the disastrous round 2 for them. So he or I don't want to run out of tokens in this game round. And now gets to be Argent's turn, and he plays trade immediately. And he certainly needs some trade goods or some resources to score the public objectives. So first he gets 3 trade goods for the card. And I just picked 9 trade goods. So let's see when I get to put those back. And now we're moving on to Arborec's turn. And he moves into the Gravity Rift with a planet on it. And it's always safe to fly into a Gravity Rift. It's more critical when you try to exit it again, because then you have to roll a die for each ship you have in there that wants to fly out. And if you roll 1 to 3, then the ship is destroyed and any units on board that ship. And if you roll 4 to 10, then it survives and actually gets an extra movement. And on the planet he found a red relic fragment. This is now Hakan's turn, and he activates the system with Arinam and Mir in it. So he's going for Arinam right now. And this will prove to be a really important move for Hakan, as you will see a little later. So there were a lot of negotiations going back and forth between Argent and Hakan. And Argent and Hakan agreed on that Hakan could borrow this planet. So we are now in the space combat. I didn't produce any hits on anti-fighter barrage at first, and Argent didn't roll any hits for the single destroyer he had in there, the Strike Wing Alpha 1. So Hakan lands there and finds some local fabricators. He gets 1 commodity, so that's great. So now we're sharing a system. And we're now rolling for the NPC player, and Diplomacy is being played. But nobody follows Diplomacy this early in the game. So we are now back to Sardak No's turn. And he is activating his forward dock adjacent to Megator Rex. He probably wants to produce even more units. And he's playing a war machine so that he can produce 4 more units and get an additional discount. As far as I remember, he also has Sarween tools. He does. So that's a discount of 2 when producing, and he can produce 4 more units than the space dock normally can provide. But he doesn't use that. He only produces 2 units, a Dreadnought and his flagship. So there's a reason for both Arborec and Argent to feel threatened now. Oh, and he also produces 2 more fighters. And now it's Argent's turn, and he also activates his forward dock. As the first part of his tactical action, he moves his destroyer and a single infantry from Megator Rex into that system. And that's simply because Argent will probably either lose Atlas or Megator Rex, and since Argent has both a space dock and a PDS on Atlas, it's probably better to protect that planet. So that's why he abandons Megator Rex entirely, and then he also produces some extra destroyers or strike wing alphas there to try and keep Sarlacc Nor out of his system. Well, he can't really attack in this game round, but then it's a good defense in the next game round. So 3 destroyers, 2 fighters and 1 mech. And now Argent hope that's enough to get Sarlacc to think twice before activating that system, even though he can't because it has been locked down. Now it's Arborec's turn, and he activates the system in front of his home system to first move some ships in there, but also to produce some units. So I'm trying to save 3 resources, 3 trade goods and 3 influence to score that objective, so that's why I didn't buy any tokens when leadership ran. And now I'm saving 1 planet for the resources, and I also have the trade goods available. And now it's Hakan's turn, and he plays the technology card. So Arborec follows, pays 1 token from the strategy pool, spends 4 resources and research Dark Energy Tap. And this will prove really good for Arborec very soon. And now we roll for the politics card, and it is being played. So everybody can now spend 1 token to buy 2 action cards. But a part of the house rule is that also everybody gets to roll for who becomes speaker. So whoever rolls the highest becomes speaker, and in case of a tie, those 2 players will roll again. Moving on to Sarlacc Nor, and now he activates his home system to produce more units. And of course Sarlacc Nor wants some dreadnoughts out there. That is what he can do, that is his specialty. But he also needs to score some public objectives. So he produces a dreadnought and 4 fighters, which is the maximum he can produce in his home system. And let's see what Argent is up to now. He also activates his home system. And one of the bad things about playing Argent is that you have 3 planets in your home system. So it requires quite many ground forces or a super strong fleet above the planets if you want to protect it from kingslaying later in the game. One of the good things is Argent's agent that allows you to place any produced ground forces on adjacent planets in both the same system, but also on planets in adjacent systems. So that helps protect those 3 planets quite a bit. On the forward dock we got 1 make out for free using self-assembly routines, but this time we have to pay for them ourselves. And he just flipped the agent so that they can be placed on any planet he wants near the space dock. And Arborec is playing the warfare card and lifts the token from the system he activated on his last turn, where he also produced a dreadnought and some infantry, as far as I remember. And now it's Hakan's turn. So he activated on Archon Veil, adjacent to Megator Rex, and is flying out there. So he took Archon Veil. Sarlacc Nor passed when it got to be his turn. So did Argent. But Arborec is flying out to the beta wormhole, the empty system there, to explore the first frontier token, and he found an enigmatic device that allows him to research one technology by spending 6 resources. And now he activates the other empty system adjacent to his home system and explores that frontier token with a Dreadnought, and there he found a Gamma wormhole. So now we have access to Malice. And that will also be an important part of this game for Arborec. So we are now in the status phase. Argent is about to score the spend 8 resources objective. And that brings him up to 4 points. And Arborec is going for the spend 3 resources, 3 influence and 3 trade goods objective. Which is also a horrible objective to score, because you could really use those resources in other ways during the game round, but that's how it is. And Hakan is scoring his first secret objective, and that is to control a planet in a system where another player also controls a planet. So that's why it was a really good deal for him to get hold of Arenam, which he shares with Argent. And let's see, what is the last stage 1 public objective? Control more planets than each of 2 of your neighbors. Alright, that's an interesting one for Sarlacc Nor and his exotriremes. So now we are in the agenda phase. The first agenda has just been revealed here. It's the Minister of Commerce, elect player. The elected player gains this card. And it basically says that whenever the owner of this card gains control of a new planet, then they will also earn 1 trade good. And the Hack Election action card has just been played. So that means that the vote order is reversed. So instead of going clockwise, we're going counterclockwise. Arborec is playing an assassinate representative. So who is going to die here? That was Hakan, and Argent is not allowed to play in this agenda phase, simply because I both play Arborec and Argent, and it will be too easy to dominate the entire agenda phase if I have both factions in my control. So now it's just between Sarlacc Nor and Arborec to figure out who becomes Minister of Commerce. So it seems like that Sarlacc has just played 6 votes on himself, and Arborec votes 7 votes on himself and becomes Minister of Commerce. And the second agenda, Judicial Abolishment. When this agenda is revealed, if there are no laws in play, discard this card and reveal another agenda from the top of the deck. But besides that, it is elected law, and then we can get rid of one of the laws that are in play. So we are simply voting for which law to remove from the game. But Minister of Commerce is removed, so that was very short-lived for Arborec to have that. So the final score after round 3 is that Argent is in the lead with 4 points, Hakan and Arborec on a shared second place with 3 points, and Sarlacc Nor on a last place with 2 points. Alright, so we're ready to get started with round 4, and we have Argent in the lead with 4 points, Hakan and Arborec with 3 points, and Sarlacc Nor in the end with 2 points. And Argent is bigger and picks trade, probably because he needs some more tokens to score some of the public spend objectives. Then Hakan has taken leadership, and it seems he is a little bit starved on tokens. So now he can use his resources to actually also score some of the spend objectives. Arborec picked Warfare, and that's because I want to go to Malice. I don't have Gravity Drive, so I do lack some movement in my game here, and Warfare can help with that, because then I can simply unlock the system I just locked down some of my units with after the first movement, and then I can move again and get out to Malice. And the advantage of doing it in this way is that I can actually get more ships to Malice, because Gravity Drive can only boost one of the ships. And Sarlacc Nor has picked Imperial, and that is probably because he wants to catch up. Megator Rex is for sure up for grabs, so he can easily take that, play the Imperial card, and then gain one extra victory point, which is crucial. And we also rolled for the NPC strategy cards, and this time Construction and Technology is played. And since Hakan started out, or he got leadership, so he starts, and his first thing was to activate adjacent to his home system, and he moves in with a Dreadnought, a Cruiser, Fighter, and 2 Infantry. And now it's Argent's turn, and he activates Sarlacc Nor's forward dock and moves in with 4 Destroyers and 2 Fighters. So let's see how the combat goes. Sarlacc Nor plays a Shields Holding, cancelling 2 hits. And he produces 2 hits against Argent, so he removes 2 Fighters. And we're rolling again. So now we have 4 Destroyers left, producing 1 hit, and Sarlacc Nor produced 2 hits. And the most important part of this attack is to actually prevent Sarlacc Nor from attacking Atlas and the forward dock. But of course he is also weakened with how many units he can fly into Megator Rex with, making it easier to take it away from him. So Argent lost the fight here. Now he plays Primor, places 2 Infantry, puts them on Megator Rex, again to make it a little harder for Sarlacc Nor to take the planet. And now it's Arborec's turn. He activates the system adjacent to his home system with the Gamma Wormhole. So this is the first movement towards Malice here. And we're moving in with 2 Dreadnoughts from one system, and a Carrier, a Fighter, and a Mech from the system with the Gravity Rift in it. Unfortunately, I'm being distracted, so I actually forget to roll for exiting the Gravity Rift. So that was an unfortunate mistake that I first discovered while editing the video here. And now it's Sarlacc Nor's turn, and he actually activated Megator Rex. Of course he did. So let's see what he flies in with. So his flagship, a Dreadnought, and 4 Infantry. That leaves his forward dock very open. Of course Arborec cannot activate the system again. No, of course Argent can't activate that system again. But Arborec could, if he wanted to. And Sarlacc Nor quickly won the ground combat against the fighters here, and has gained control of Megator Rex, so I guess he will play the Imperial card on his next turn. But first we're rolling for the NPC card, and the technology card is played. Argent does not research any technology. Arborec researches Antimars, and that's because there's an asteroid field with a frontier token in it, so he wants to go in there, and I want to go in there and explore that. Hakan and Sarlacc Nor does not research any technologies either. So Hakan activates adjacent to Megator Rex and flies in there with 3 cruisers, 2 mechs, and an infantry. And let's see what he gets when he explores. A red relic fragment. Alright, so now it's Argent's turn, and he plays the trade strategy card. And of course Hakan is replenished. So he gets his 6 commodities. And after some really long negotiations, Hakan and Argent decides to trade. And now it's Arborec's turn, and he plays the Warfare strategy card and lifts the command token from the Gamma Wormhole, so that I can fly out to Malice very soon. Now it's Salaknor's turn, and he plays the Imperial card. And he scores, of course, a point for controlling Megaton Rex. And then he also scores the public objective about controlling more planets than each of 2 neighbors. So that was 2 quick points for him. That was very good. And now it's the NPC player, and he plays the construction strategy card. And Salaknor follows and produces or places a PDS, and so does Hakan. And when it gets to be Hakan's turn, he plays the leadership card, gains the 3 command tokens for free, of course. Argent buys 2 command tokens, so does Arborec. Now it is Argent's turn, and he activates out on Evera, a planet he has controlled for a long time, but didn't have any units on it. So he goes out there with a destroyer, a mech, and an infantry. And since the destroyer only has capacity 1, then you couldn't have 2 units with you, but the mechs are not taking up any space on the destroyer. And he also flies in there with a cruiser. And now it's Arborec, and he activates out on Malice, flips the planet, locks it, and takes the planet cards, and moves the entire fleet from the empty system. Explores the planet and find a blue relic fragment, and it wasn't the entire fleet. I actually left behind the 2 dreadnoughts and a fighter. So now I have 3 blue relic fragments. So now I can actually purchase those and gain a fragment. But first I want to produce some units out on Malice. Since I brought some ground forces with me, I can produce on those. So instead of bringing the dreadnoughts, I am just producing a small destroyer fleet instead. I have a fleet supply of 4, so I can have 4 non-fighter ships out there. And that matches the 3 destroyers I'm producing. That is really one of the strengths with Arborec, that is you can produce on the go. So Salaknor just passed. Now it's Hakan's turn. Plays an action card. And that is the Scuttle action card, so he can remove 1 or 2 ships from the board and gain the corresponding trick goods. So he removes a carrier and gains 3 trick goods. Argent activates adjacent to his home system, flies in there with a destroyer, a mech, and an infantry, and grabs a Renam from Hakan here. A planet Argent rightfully owns, at least it is in his slide, so that's how it is. Arborec now purchases 3 relic fragments on his turn and is about to gain 1 relic. Let's see what I get here. Shot of the Throne. That's a really good one. When you gain this card, gain 1 victory point. And when you lose this card, lose 1 victory point. So I've just gained control of Malice here, so that actually endangers this victory point that I just earned. But luckily for me, I actually got out there with quite many units, and I also produced some extra destroyers out there to protect that. And of course they could also take my home planet away from me, and that is but at least that's 1 extra point for Arborec here. And Hakan now activates the system adjacent to his home system where there is a forward dock. He spends some trick goods and produces a dreadnought and a carrier, hopefully also some ground forces. 1 and 2. And does he actually get away with placing those ground forces on that empty planet? Maybe he got away with that. Normally you have to place the infantry on the same planet as your space dock. Cannot produce them on an empty planet. Alright, it's Argent now. And he already prepared, he's going to produce. So he activates Atlas and produces 4 destroyers and 1 mech, which is the maximum he can produce on that planet. And Arborec, now Argent actually flipped his agent so that the mech he produced can be placed on Envera instead, and protecting that planet even further against Hakan. Now Arborec activates the asteroid field and flies in there with a dreadnought and an infantry. And explores the frontier token. Lost crew. Draw 2 action cards. And then he actually produced a dreadnought in there. That was production 1 with the infantry. Hakan plays an action card, the focused research, and researches the dreadnought 2. Pays 4 triggers, flips AI development algorithm, because he doesn't have 2 blue technologies, but AI can count as the second blue one, and he already got a yellow, so he can research that. Argent passes for this game round. So does Arborec, Hakan as well, and now all 4 players have passed. So let's see who scores what. So Hakan scores first, and he goes for the spent 8 resources. All of us are now on 4 points. Argent scores the spent 3 influence 3 resources and 3 tech bits. Arborec scores the control more planets than each of 2 neighbors. No, Arborec scores the one with controlling 4 planets with the same trait. Sorry, that was a mistake. That's why Malice was so important, because that was the 4th cultural planet. And Sarlacc scores the spent 8 resources plus 1 secret. So now Sarlacc is actually in the lead. He was going from being on the last place to now being leading the game. So that was a really good round for Sarlacc, scoring 4 points. And we are now ready to reveal the first stage 2 public objective. Let's see what it is. And it is subdue the galaxy, control 11 non-home planets, which is just insane. We are now in the agenda phase, and this time it's Argent not participating, again because I'm playing both Argent and Arborec. Let's flip the first agenda and see what it is. Fleet regulations. Alright, so each player can have a maximum of 4 tokens in their fleet pool if it goes 4. Otherwise, everybody places 1 extra command token in their fleet pool, and it's taken from the reinforcements. Neither Hakan or Arborec has any wins. Sarlacc doesn't either, and Argent doesn't. Let's see if they have any afters. Yes. So Hakan played a leadership rider and placed it on 4. So that will give him some extra command tokens if the law is voted for, and was. So now we can have a maximum of 4 tokens in our fleet supply. And we're ready for the second agenda. Let's see what it is. Minister of Policy. Elect player. Elect the player gains this card at the end of the status phase. the elected player gains 1 action card. So basically a neural motivator for the rest of the game. Argent doesn't have any wins, neither do Hakan, Arborec, nor Sardak nor. And there are also not played any afters. So Hakan spends all of his votes on himself, so does Arborec. But Sardak nor can easily gain this. But in this case, Hakan was the elected player, so now he gets to draw 1 extra action card at the end of the status phase. And that was the end of round 4. So Sardak nor actually went from being the last player to be the leading player, but both Arborec, Hakan and Argent is just behind him. Alright, so we are officially now in the endgame. We are entering round 5 and we have Sardak nor in the lead with 6 points and the rest of the players with 5 and 4 points. And here in the strategy phase, Argent picks technology, and that's because he wants to go for war sons in this game round. Hakan picks trade, and Arborec picks Imperial because I want to score spending 8 resources during the game round, and then hopefully I can also have more planets than each of 2 of my neighbors at the end of the game round. And lastly, Sardak nor is picking Warfare. And we roll for the NPC strategy cards. The first one coming up is Politics, and let's see what the next one is. That is Construction. First up we have Hakan, and he decides to play an action card. It's Refit Troops. So that is an action, and then he can replace 1 or 2 of his infantry with mechs. So he places 1 mech on the planet adjacent to his home system, and I think that was the only one he had left in his reinforcements. And now it's Sardak nor. He activates his forward dock and produces 2 dreadnoughts, 2 cruisers and 2 infantry. And that forward dock has really made sense for Sardak nor. He has produced so many units out there. I almost think that he has produced more units out there than he has in his home system. We are moving on to Argent. He picked the technology card and he plays it as his first action. The reason for this is that he wants to go for war sons. There are some control objectives, and what better unit do we have than having war sons to achieve those? And he also exhausts or pays 6 resources to research another technology, which is the neural motivator. It is fairly late in the game for that, to be honest. But he has a secret objective where we need to discard 5 action cards. So of course neural motivator will help Argent achieve that secret objective. And the last thing Argent does is to flip Primor, so he can place 2 infantry, and he's placing them at his forward dock. Now it's Arborec's turn, and he replaces a cruiser, and he replaces a destroyer with a cruiser in the system adjacent to Sardak nor. Now he gives Hakan his 3 commodities in exchange for getting some trade goods back when it gets to be Hakan. And Arborec also flips Malice so that he gets 2 trade goods. We are now at the end of the turn and rolling for the NPC card, and it is Politics being played. Ultimately Sardak nor gets to be speaker, so he picks strategy card as the first one in the next game round, which is always good in the late game, so that you can get a strategy card with a low initiative number and score first during the status phase. It is now Hakan's turn, and as agreed with Arborec, he gets 3 trade goods back. I don't remember the details of that trade, but what Hakan does is that he plays the trade strategy card, the 3 trade goods, and replenished all of his commodities. When it gets to be Sardak nor, he plays the warfare strategy card and lifts the token from his forward dock. Argent is following the secondary, and he produces a war son and a destroyer in his home system. So it will be exciting to see where he's going to use that war son. And now when it's Argent's turn, he plays an action card, and that is the frontline deployment action card. And then you get to place 3 infantry on a planet you control. Arborec plays the Imperial strategy card as the first one, Now we have the 8 resources, so that's very simple to spend that. Score the point. And since we don't control Megator Rex, Arborec will also get a new secret. Well, now Arborec is in the lead along with Sarlacc Nor. Let's see what the secret is. And that is to have 4 technologies of the same color. Since I have 2 blue technologies, then that would be the logical one to try and research. We are now in turn 3, and Hakan activates the system adjacent to his home system, and that allows him to explore one of the planets he controlled there because he got scanning drone network. So he found some abandoned warehouses that will give him a few commodities, and then he flies in with a couple of units and he picks up also ground force from his home planet. Next up we have Sarlacc Nor, and he activates out on Megator, and then he flies in with a Dreadnought, a cruiser. So I guess he wants to protect Megator Rex, probably because he wants the Imperial card. So now that when it's Argent's turn, he's playing a Plague on Megator Rex, and with that you get to roll a dice for each ground force, for each infantry on that planet. And as I remember, it's if you roll, is it more than 6? I don't remember. He decides to roll for himself 3 dice, and I think if you need to roll 6 or more, then 1 infantry dies for each 6 that is rolled. So 1 infantry died on Megator Rex. Moving on to Arborec's turn, he plays an enigmatic device, and with that I can spend 6 resources to research 1 technology, and that is very convenient to have now that I got the secret with having 4 technologies in the same corner. So now I can research 1 blue technology, and I pick Sling Relay. That is overall a really good technology. I could also went for Gravity Drive, but since I got Dreadnought 2 now, then I have fixed my mobility problem somewhat. And Arborec is the last player in the turn order, and we roll for construction. That is played, but nobody follows. We are now in turn 4. Hakan passes, and now it's Sarlacc Nor, and he activates his forward dock again, and this time he moves in with 2 Dreadnoughts from his home system, and I think it's 2 fighters as well. So he's really building up a fleet here. I wonder what he wants to do with that. Maybe we will see that a little later. And he also produces some fighters on his space dock. And now Argent is activating Sarlacc Nor. This is getting exciting. He moves in with the Warzone and a destroyer, and I guess some infantry as well. And that is because there's a public objective about controlling 4 planets with the same trait, and we have 2 cultural planets here, and that will bring Argent up to 4 cultural planets. And he also takes 2 destroyers from his forward dock and sends them through the rift, so he needs to roll a die for each, and luckily for Argent, both of them survives and also enters the space combat here. So first, if Argent remembers, we can roll for some anti-fighter rush. That doesn't make any sense because there are no units with sustained damage. Produced 5 hits on the anti-fighter barrage, but I don't see any fighters, and he doesn't have sustain, and there are no infantry in the space area, so I think that's a pretty useless roll this time. So let's just move on to space combat. But Sarlacc doesn't want to participate in space combat. He plays a action card as Skilled Retreat, and he moves his carrier out of the system and into the system adjacent to Argent. So now we get to the invasion step. So first Argent bombards and produces 3 hits on Vega Minor, and then he puts down 1 infantry there, and the other 4 is participating in ground combat on Vega Major. So it's 4 against 1. That should be a win for Argent. 0 hits and just 1 hit, but that is enough to win the ground combat. So if Argent can keep control of those 2 planets, then he has all 4 and can score a point. Now it's Arborec's turn, and he moves his cruiser into the Gravity Rift to explore the Frontier token and gets an unknown relic fragment. and that was pretty useless. In round 5, Hakan has already passed, so it's Sarlacc Nor's turn, and he plays an insubordination action card on Argent, so that he has to remove a token from his tactical pool. That always hurts, but of course losing those 2 planets also hurts Sarlacc Nor, so I guess that's completely fair. But that means that Argent is completely out of tokens and actions, so he will probably have to pass for the game round. And so does Arborec. And so does Sarlacc Nor. We are now entering the status phase. Hakan gets to score first, and he goes for the spend 3 command tokens, and he doesn't have any secrets. Now it's Sarlacc Nor's turn. He doesn't have any public objectives he can go for, but he actually thought that he had ships in 3 systems adjacent to an anomaly, but unfortunately he didn't. Then Argent scored the control 4 planets with the same trait, and he had 2 extra cultural planets he took from Sarlacc Nor. And lastly, Arborec scores the control more planets than each of 2 neighbors, bringing him into the lead and revealing the second stage 2 objective, and that is to control 2 planets either in or adjacent to 2 different players' home systems. That is a really nasty one and can be really hard to score. It's time for the agenda phase, and we are flipping the first one. Armed Forces Standardization. Elect player. The elected player plays command tokens from their reinforcements so that they have 3 tokens in their tactic pool, 3 tokens in their fleet pool, and 2 tokens in their strategy pool. And if Sarlacc Nor is elected, then he would lose 2 ships, Argent would lose a single ship, and Hakan would also lose a single ship, and Arborec wouldn't lose any. Arborec is not allowed to participate here in this agenda phase, so Argent does, and he is negotiating with Hakan about electing Sarlacc Nor. But first, we don't play any Wind Riders, and there won't be played any After Riders either. So the agreement is that Argent puts 9 votes on Sarlacc Nor, and then Hakan will put 5 votes on Sarlacc Nor, bringing it up to a total of 14 votes, which is more than Sarlacc Nor has, and then he is the elected player. But of course he's not interested in that because he just built up a rather large fleet. That is also why he is the target in this agenda phase. So Argent plays 5 votes of his own, and he gets 4 extra for the number of players participating in the game. And that's 6, as it says. And then Hakan votes 5 as well. But Sarlacc Nor doesn't want to be elected, so he plays a distinguished counselor, and then Argent is the elected. So Argent is the elected player instead, and then he gets, actually it's pretty good for Argent because he gets a few extra tokens and he only loses 1 destroyer. The second agenda, Anti-Intellectual Revolution. It's 4 or against. 4. After a player researches a technology, they must destroy 1 of their non-fighter ships. So that's fairly cheap for Argent, because he can always just destroy a destroyer. And if you vote against, then you have to exhaust 1 planet for each technology that you own. And since most of the players have 5 or 6 technologies each, then it would be basically the same for everyone. But Argent is voting all of his votes for, and then the other players cannot really do anything about it. Alright, that was the end of round 5. We now have Arborec in the lead with 7 points. We have Argent and Sarlacc Nor on 6 points, and Hakan on 5 points. And now we're entering the very last game round in this game. So let's see who wins. We are now entering the 6th and last game round in this game. We have Arborec on 7 points, Argent and Sarlacc Nor on 6 points, and finally we have Hakan on 5 points. So Sarlacc Nor picked politics in the last game round, and then he became speaker, so he gets to choose first, and he goes for leadership. And I wonder why, because he have Megator Rex, so he could have picked Imperial, and then scored a point there. Now we have Argent going for politics, and that's probably because he wants the speaker token in the next game round, but he doesn't know that it's the last one. Hakan picks Imperial, so he either wants to score 2 public objectives, or maybe even go for Megator Rex, you never know. And lastly, Arborec is picking technology, and that's because I want to get my 4th and last blue technology, so I can score my secret objective. And now we're rolling for the NPC cards, and we have Diplomacy and Construction played in this round. And Salaknor goes first, and he activates the system with Argent's Warzone and 2 destroyers in it. Let's see what he moves in with. So 3 dreadnoughts, 1 cruiser, 3 fighters, and a single infantry. Now we are rolling for anti-fighter barrage, and since I have the upgraded Strike Wing Alpha 2s, then I can actually hit the infantry in the space area as long as I produce more hits than the opponent has fighters in it. So when I use the anti-fighter barrage, all of my 9s and 10s I roll will destroy infantry in the space area. And now we're rolling for regular space combat, and the Warzone produces 2 hits, and so does Salaknor. So of course the 2 destroyers are destroyed. So now he cannot invade any of the planets, but he can still take out my Warzone. And the fighters were also destroyed during anti-fighter barrage. And now Argent plays a skilled retreat that says at the start of a round of space combat, then you can retreat into an adjacent system. So that is a sure way to protect the Warzone. Of course, unless Salaknor had a sabotage, he could then sabotage that card, and then he would probably destroy the Warzone here. But now we are of course moving on to the bombardment step. So Salaknor is bombarding on Vega Major. That's where Argent has the most infantry, and let's see how many hits he produces. And he produces just a single hit. And that was it. Now Salaknor is controlling the airspace above Vega Major and Vega Minor. And now it's Argent's turn, and he activates Hakan's home system. This is getting interesting now, so let's see what he moves in with. A destroyer, a mech, an infantry. That's the capacity on the destroyer here. Or he could bring more mechs, of course. But it is a battle with 1 carrier against 1 destroyer, and unfortunately for Argent, the carrier actually produces a hit and completely evades the attack here. It was a long shot, but of course if you're going for 2 points, then you need to take some chances sometimes. And by doing this attack, Argent actually leaves his home system completely empty, but neither Hakan nor Salaknor can reach it, so it is fairly safe to do so, at least temporarily. Lastly, Argent flips Primor and places 2 infantry. Now it's Hakan's turn, and he plays a Repeal Law action card, and he removes the Fleet Regulations Law. Lastly, we roll for the NPC strategy card, and neither of them were played in this game round. In turn 2, Salaknor plays the leadership action card immediately, and then Argent gets to buy 5 tokens in total, and Arborec buys 4 tokens. And it's always nice to have more tokens in the last game round, or in the last game rounds, simply so you can try to achieve whatever you want to achieve. Of course, granted that you have the fleets that you need. But having extra tokens can also help you stall your very important action, so that some of the other players may have passed, and then you can, for instance, take the planets that you need, while the other players cannot stop you from doing so, or at least not attack back afterwards. In Argent's turn, he plays the politics card immediately, gains the speaker token and 2 action cards, and he gets a trade rider that will give him 5 trade goods if the outcome he voted for comes through, and then he gets a sabotage as well. Now it's Arborec's turn, and he replaces the cruiser he built on Sling Relay in turn 1 with a Dreadnought by using his agent. Now it gets to be Hakan's turn, and he activates out on Megator Rex. He plays a rally action card, and that will give him 2 extra tokens in his fleet pool after he activates a system containing another player's ships. So I guess that was why he wanted to repeal that law. So now he can actually fly into Megator Rex with a huge fleet. So 2 dreadnoughts, 4 cruisers and some ground forces, and now he also plays a morale boost. So all of his combat rolls in this round of space combat is increased by 1. Let's see if that is enough to take Megator Rex. So he produces 3 hits. That was not exactly much. And Sardagnor produced 4 hits. And then Sardagnor plays an emergency repairs, and that means that all the dreadnoughts that he took sustained damage on is now repaired. So now Hakan calls a retreat. So now he retreats back into the system adjacent to Megator Rex. Here in turn 3, Sardagnor activates his home system and produces 2 cruisers. In Argent's turn, he plays an unexpected action card, and with that he gets to remove a command token from the game board. So whenever you retreat, you place a command token in the system you retreat into, and in this case it was the Warzone, and of course he wants to unlock the Warzone so that he can move it into safety. And now that it becomes Arborec, he plays the technology card immediately, and since we have this law in place where we need to sacrifice a ship, then Arborec has to sacrifice a carrier and a fighter because it doesn't have capacity. And then I research Gravity Drive, which is my 4th blue technology, so I can score the secret objective. And I finally got Gravity Drive. That is usually a tech you want to get much earlier in the game. And Hakan also plays an action card. He plays Reactor Meltdown, and he does it on Atlas here. So Argent loses his forward dock, which is of course very annoying, but completely fair. And now we're rolling for the NPC card and see if Diplomacy is played, and we do. So lucky for us, Leadership was played early in this game round, so we could use even resource heavy planets to buy more command tokens for, because we knew that Diplomacy would be played later in the game, and then we could unexhaust 2 planets by doing the secondary of that. We're entering turn 4, and Sardagnor activates his forward dock immediately, and he produces 2 cruisers and 2 fighters. Argent activates his home system, probably also to produce some units. So he produces a flagship, a dreadnought, 2 destroyers, and he gets a make out on self-assembly routines. That is one of the disadvantages of Argent's home system, is that you cannot produce that many units. Now it's Arborec's turn, and he plays his hero, and with that he gets to use the production abilities on all the units on the game board that can produce units. So now we want to get all those units out there, so we can gain control of 2 planets adjacent to both Sardagnor and Hakan's home systems. Of course you still need to pay for the units you produce, but I'm basically producing 2 small fleets, 2 cruisers, a place adjacent to my home system, and 1 cruiser, 1 carrier, and a couple of infantry. I also place another system adjacent to my home system, so that I can protect the home system a little bit when I fly out and hopefully gain control of those 2 planets. Moving on to Hakan here, and he also activates his home system. It's all about production in this game round, and he produces his flagship, a Dreadnought and 2 infantry. Alright, so we are entering turn 5 here, and Sarlacc passed as the first one. And now it gets to be Argent, and he moves his Warsun to safety through the beta wormhole and parks it in the Atlas system. And it's perfect for Arborec that Sarlacc has passed, because now Arborec can gain control of one of his planets and move in with sufficient ships and ground forces to hopefully control it in the status phase. And it is actually only Hakan who can do anything about this, because I also play Argent, and Argent and Arborec are not allowed to neither combat each other or trade or anything. So it's just a matter of getting plenty of units in there. And now it is Hakan's turn. He plays the Imperial card. Unfortunately for him, the attack on Megator Rex earlier in this game round failed, so he only gets a new secret objective from this. Unfortunately for him, he couldn't score any of the public objectives or get a Megator Rex point. We are now in turn 6, and Argent is attacking Hakan again, this time adjacent to his home system, and hopefully he can gain control of one of the planets there, but it is a long shot because Argent can only bring 1 infantry and 1 mech, because he could also have brought the other mech. I just realized that here while editing the video, but of course that would leave Evera completely empty. Let's see how the space combat goes. 2 hits, that is great, and Hakan produced a single hit, so the cruiser is of course destroyed, because the destroyer got all the units on it. And then he attempt invasion, so it's mano a mano here, 1 mech and 1 infantry against 1 mech and 1 infantry. There are no action cards to help here. Hakan landed a hit, Argent 0 hits, so he takes a sustain on the mech of course, and they roll again, and again 0 hits. This is not going well for Argent. He just lost an infantry there. So there's only the sustained mech left. And Hakan made yet another hit. And finally Argent made a hit, but that was way too late. So of course Hakan takes a sustain on his mech. Moving on to Arborec here. And he completely empties the Malice system, flies through the Alpha wormhole, and enters the perimeter system. He actually leaves the fighters behind because he didn't have capacity for them, and it is more important to get some more ground forces down on the planets, so he sacrificed 2 fighters there, and then he moves in with another Dreadnought and a fighter. So this is potentially the second planet here, so Arborec can score the 2-pointer. Both Sarlacc and Hakan here have seen the writing on the wall here. They are probably about to lose the game. A lot of discussions were going on. Arborec just rolled for bombardment but didn't produce any hits. So we proceed to ground combat. Let's see how it goes. 2 hits. And 0 hits from Hakan, so that is plenty to gain control of perimeter. Now it's just a matter of holding the planets, both of them, until the status phase. Hakan just passed when it got to be his turn. Now Argent activates on perimeter, but that is only a stall action. It gets to be Arborec, and he also passes, and that means that Argent is the last player, so he can score be the last player to pass secret objective. and that will bring him up to 7 points. And then Argent also passed. Entering the status phase here, Sarlacc scores a secret objective. Argent scores controlling more planets than each of 2 neighbors. And then he discards 5 action cards, so null motivator that he got in the last game round gave him enough action cards to score that objective, giving him 2 additional points. And now it's Arborec's turn. He scores the control 2 planets in or adjacent to 2 other players' home systems, bring him up to 9 points. And then he has the secret with owning 4 technologies of the same color, bringing him up to 10 points. So that gave Arborec the victory, which is of course always a joy. But playing 2 factions at the same time is definitely not a joy, and it is not something I would ever recommend anybody do. I think the big turning factor for Arborec in this game was actually Dark Energy Tap. That's also why I highlighted it in, I think it was round 2, because he found the Gamma Wormhole with exploring one of the Frontier tokens, which gave access to Malice, and then he would have 4 cultural planets that could score him up an objective. And Dark Energy Tap also gave him an enigmatic device that would help him research another technology, getting him closer to the 4 blue technologies. And I also got a Shard of the Throne where I needed to control a legendary planet, and that would also give a victory point. So indirectly, Dark Energy Tap has given Arborec access to 3 victory points, which is huge. But good game. Thank you for following along. Please subscribe to the channel. You can also join my Patreon if you want to support the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.